There is a strange paradox about human behavior. The harder you try to make certain people like you, the less they sometimes seem to value you. The more desperately you try to keep someone's attention, the less interested they can become. The more you explain yourself, the less seriously your words can sometimes be taken. And the more you chase someone's approval, the more power you quietly give them over your emotional state. But why? Why does trying harder sometimes produce the exact opposite of what we want? 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosophers were already wrestling with a version of this problem. They understood something about human nature that many of us still struggle to understand today. You cannot build your worth on someone else's reaction to you. You can be kind, you can be generous, you can communicate, you can apologize, you can give your best, but there comes a point where trying harder stops being strength and becomes attachment. And attachment becomes dangerous when your peace depends on the response of another person. So today, we're going to explore why people sometimes lose respect for those who try too hard, why constantly seeking approval can weaken your presence, and how Stoic philosophy teaches you to become the kind of person who doesn't need to chase respect because they have already developed something more important: self respect. Think about the last time you desperately wanted someone to like you. Maybe it was a romantic interest, maybe a friend, maybe someone at work, maybe someone you admired. You started paying attention to every little detail. How quickly did they reply? Why did they use that particular emoji? Why did they sound different today? Why didn't they invite you? Why did they watch your story but not respond? And suddenly, something that was supposed to be simple became a psychological investigation. You weren't simply talking to them anymore. You were monitoring them. And the moment that happens, you've already surrendered something: your peace. Because now your emotional state depends on information that isn't under your control. If they reply quickly, you feel good. If they reply slowly, you become anxious. If they compliment you, you feel valuable. If they criticize you, your confidence drops. If they choose you, you feel important. If they choose someone else, you question yourself. The Stoics would immediately recognize the problem. You've placed something external in charge of something internal. Epictetus taught that some things are within our control while others are not. Your judgments are yours, your choices are yours, your actions are yours. But another person's opinion, their affection, their attention, their decision, those belong to them. And when you make your peace dependent upon something that belongs to another person, you have voluntarily handed them the keys to your mind. Think about how powerful that is. Someone can ruin your entire day without even being in the same room. They don't have to insult you, they don't have to attack you, they simply have to stop giving you the attention you became dependent upon. And suddenly you're suffering, not necessarily because of what happened, but because of the meaning you've attached to it. Modern life has made this problem even worse. We have created machines that constantly tell us what other people think about us: likes, comments, views, followers, messages, read receipts, story views. Every number becomes a tiny measurement of perceived worth. And slowly, without realizing it, people begin outsourcing their self esteem. They wake up and check their phone. They post something. They wait. They refresh. They look for reactions. And if the reaction is smaller than expected, their mood changes. This is a dangerous psychological loop, because once you discover that external approval can make you feel good, you begin chasing more of it. But the problem is that external validation is unstable. Today, someone loves your work, tomorrow, they ignore it. Today, someone tells you that you're attractive, tomorrow, they don't notice you. Today, you're invited, tomorrow, you're forgotten. If your identity depends on these fluctuations, your emotional life becomes a roller coaster controlled by other people. The Stoic response is not to stop caring, it is to relocate your source of stability. Ask yourself, what would remain valuable about me if nobody applauded? That question is uncomfortable, but it is powerful, because when you can answer it honestly, you begin building a self that doesn't require constant permission from the world. One of the clearest signs that you're trying too hard is constant over explanation. You make a mistake, you apologize. That's healthy. But then you continue. I didn't mean it like that. I was just tired. Let me explain what actually happened. Please don't misunderstand me. And the reason I said that was, and 5 minutes later, you're no longer communicating. You're pleading for someone to interpret you favorably. There's a difference. Healthy communication says, This is what I meant. I'm sorry if it hurt you. Insecurity says, please understand me. Please don't be upset with me. Please don't think badly of me. The first comes from responsibility. The second comes from fear. And the Stoics would tell you something uncomfortable. You cannot control whether someone misunderstands you. You can clarify, you can communicate honestly, you can apologize when you're wrong, but eventually you have to let your character speak for itself. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself to focus on living correctly rather than becoming consumed by reputation. And that's a powerful lesson today because social media has created an entire culture of reputation management. We constantly curate ourselves, our photos, our opinions, our accomplishments, our relationships, our lifestyles. We're constantly asking, how am I being perceived? But there's a deeper question. Who am I when nobody is watching? That is where Stoicism begins because a person who knows who they are doesn't need to constantly convince everyone else. There is another problem with trying too hard. It creates an imbalance. Imagine two people in a relationship. One person constantly initiates. They always text first. They always call. They always plan. They always apologize. They always try to repair the relationship. And the other person simply receives. Over time, resentment develops. The person chasing starts thinking, why don't they appreciate everything I do? But here's the difficult truth. Sometimes you aren't being underappreciated. Sometimes you're giving more than the relationship is asking for because you're afraid of losing it. That's different. And this is where conscious detachment becomes powerful. Detachment doesn't mean I don't care. It means I care, but I won't abandon myself to keep this. That's a completely different mindset. You can love someone deeply without begging them to stay. You can want someone without believing you need them. You can pursue success without believing failure makes you worthless. You can want recognition without becoming dependent upon applause. This is the Stoic balance. Desire without desperation, ambition without obsession, love without possession, effort without attachment to outcome. And when you live this way, something changes. You become calmer. You stop forcing. You stop chasing. You stop trying to manufacture reactions from people. And you begin investing your energy where it actually belongs, into yourself, into your actions, into your character. Let's make something very clear. Trying isn't bad. Effort is good. Ambition is good. Love is good. Persistence is good. The problem is not effort. The problem is attachment to the outcome. You apply for the job, you prepare, you study, you improve your resume, you walk into the interview prepared, and then you accept that the final decision is not entirely yours to command. That's Stoicism. You train, you compete, you prepare, you give everything you've got, but you understand that victory isn't entirely under your control. The same applies to relationships. Be a good partner, communicate, listen, show affection, be honest, but don't make your identity dependent upon whether another person stays. Because if your entire identity is built around keeping someone, you aren't simply loving anymore. You're managing fear. And fear makes people do strange things. They tolerate disrespect, they abandon boundaries, they constantly seek reassurance, they become jealous, they monitor, they manipulate, they overgive, and eventually they lose themselves. The Stoic asks a different question, not how do I make this person stay, but how do I conduct myself with dignity regardless of what this person chooses? That question changes everything. Real self respect rarely announces itself. It doesn't need to. A person with self respect doesn't have to constantly say, I know my worth. Their behavior demonstrates it. They don't chase people who repeatedly reject them. They don't beg for basic respect. They don't remain where they are consistently mistreated. They don't need to win every argument. They don't need everyone to understand them. They don't need to prove that they're important. And this pause. Ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of losing? Maybe it's their attention. Maybe it's their affection. Maybe it's their respect. Maybe it's the image you want them to have of you. And then remember the Stoic lesson. You can control your effort. You can control your character. You can control your response. But you cannot control another human being. And the moment you accept that, you become free. Don't become cold. Don't stop loving. Don't stop trying. Simply stop abandoning yourself in the process. Give your best, speak honestly, love deeply, work hard, but hold the outcome with an open hand. because the strongest person in the room isn't always the loudest. Sometimes it's the person who doesn't need to prove anything, the person who can walk away without hatred, the person who can stay without desperation, the person who can lose without losing themselves. That is self mastery. And perhaps that is one of the deepest lessons Stoicism can offer us.